Hello again everyone, this is Mike Peden with another edition of Peden's Journal. I'm going to talk about some of the headlines dealing with autism from the summer, and I'm going to start with the comments made by conservative radio host Michael Savage. If you don't know what I'm talking about, last month Michael Savage spoke about autism, and I quote the following from an article from CBS on July 20th of this year. He said, "I'll tell you what autism is. In 99% of the cases, it's a brat who hasn't been told to cut the act out. That's what autism is. What do they mean they scream and they're silent? They don't have a father around to tell them, don't act like a moron. You'll get nowhere in life. Stop acting like a putz. Straighten up. Act like a man. Don't sit there crying and screaming, idiot." For those of you who did follow that story, you probably were aware that a lot of parents and people in the autism community were a little ticked off, and that's putting it lightly. They organized a protest the following week, and Savage later went on to defend himself, saying the comments were his thoughts on what he believes to be an overdiagnosis of autism. And then advertisers also pulled their sponsorships from his show for those comments. My guess is that Savage doesn't have much experience with the autism community, because the comments that he made go back to some of these stereotypes with autism. And that used to be the idea that people who were not on the spectrum thought autistic children were just brats, and I don't blame them for thinking that way, as self-centered and as closed-minded as that is, because autism is not a physical disability, so there is no way to tell someone with autism apart from someone who doesn't have autism. The comments brought out that myth, and it was really the first time that controversy was talked about or addressed by a shock jock. That Savage is a shock jock, much like Don Imus, who we all know had his little incident with the Rutgers women's basketball team in 2007. And I kind of wonder if there's a identification issue there, because when Imus made those comments, and everybody knew about it or understood what was going on, because racism is a little easier to understand. It's a little easier to pick up on than the rights of the mentally disabled. So I wasn't particularly pleased with the comments Savage made. I don't want to give him an excuse saying, oh, he's a shock jock, that's what he's paid to do, because even though it was about a mental disability and had nothing to do with Don Imus, there is a similarity between him and Imus's comments, in that these viewpoints contribute to the continued problems and stereotypes that our society has sometimes. So if anything, hopefully it will make the audience a little more intelligent about what autism is, and hopefully they'll research it and find out that we're not brats, we're not morons, we're not idiots. There is a bigger problem out there. The other thing I wanted to talk to you about is something I've been following for the last year, is the vaccine autism link. I've never addressed it in my shows because I just don't think it would provide any educational material to parents, to autistics, to people on the spectrum, because it's a debate without any sort of proof. If you don't know what I'm talking about, there's a belief from some parents, and it's been fueled by a government concession earlier this year in New York, and people like Jenny McCarthy and Jim Carrey, who suggested that vaccines cause a link. But the idea is that vaccines contain mercury, and somehow mercury poisoning develops or leads to autism in number of children. However, there have been a number of major studies. In fact, there have been 5 major studies, and an article from CNN says that the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, the CDC, the World Health Organization, and the Institute of Medicine all say there is no link between vaccines and autism. However, the debate is still gaining steam because of high-profile incidents and celebrities who believe that there is a link. And their argument is that the number of vaccinations have increased rapidly in the last few years, and they wonder if children should be getting all these vaccinations. Now, until there is an indisputable evidence that there is a link between vaccines and autism, I really don't feel I can put in my opinion about that. I don't believe there is one, and the reason I say that was the mercury that they're referring to. There was a component that contained it called thimerosal, and that was removed from most vaccinations in 2001, yet the autism diagnosis rate continues to climb. At the same time, if vaccinations are causing autism, how do you account for all the other adults, children, teenagers, etc., who have been vaccinated and turned out to be okay? My brother's fine. Well, both of my brothers are fine. My sister's fine. My parents don't have a problem. I just lucked out, I guess. So I don't understand. If they believe there's a link, then why aren't more people getting autism? It's just something that intrigues me. Now, my theory, and it has some support, my theory is that because autism usually isn't diagnosed until a child is 1 or 2 years old, and about that time they're going to receive some vaccinations, and because autism has no cause, parents are looking to find an answer, and there isn't one. There's no cause, there's no cure, and so they cling to the first thing they can find, or they'll backtrack and start examining their child's behavior, and then perhaps they might think, oh, my child was fine until he got some vaccination, and then he turned out like this. And I quote an article from CNN from April 2nd of this year, and the article said, from Dr. Paul Offit was quoted, and he said this: "It will have to happen where some children will get a vaccine. They will have been fine. They will get the vaccine, and they will not be fine anymore. And I think parents can reasonably ask the question, is it the vaccine that did this?" He also went on to say about 20% of children with autism will regress between their first and second birthday, which goes along with what I believe is fueling the vaccine autism link. Now, the other reason why, the other opinion I have to add to that is, if we order everyone to stop with these vaccines, we could actually be doing more harm than good. And I quote a Reuters article from February of this year. In 1998, Dr. Andrew Wakefield of Royal Free Hospital in London and colleagues sparked a fierce worldwide debate among scientists and a health scare by suggesting the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine caused autism. The number of vaccinations then dropped in Great Britain, and outbreaks of all 3 diseases followed. Now, I know autism can be debilitating mentally and cause a lot of grief, stress, and things like that, but the last time I checked, I don't think autism can kill you. The vaccinations that we all required to have help protect us against diseases that potentially can kill you. So, to wrap it up, there's still a lot of questions out there, but I really feel that we can't start pointing fingers until we can find some indisputable evidence to suggest one thing or another. And until then, I think we just need to increase our efforts to become more informed. That will do it for today's episode. Until next time, so long.